boys and girls. Welcome to Grade 5 Social Studies. Today, our topic is natural regions. We are going to learn some more about our natural regions. Let us look back. What did we learn in our last lesson? We learned in our last lesson what is a natural region, how many natural regions are there in Guyana, the names of each natural region, the physical features of each natural region. Homework. Did you do your homework? Let's check our answers. Match the colors to the natural region. Red was the low coastal plain. Red, low coastal plain. Blue, the hilly sand and clay region. Blue, hilly sand and clay region. Yellow, the forested highland region. Yellow, the forested highland region. Green, the interior savanna. Green, the interior savanna. We are continuing with our homework. The natural region that has hot days and cool nights is the hilly sand and clay region. Mountains can be found in the forested highland region. Where can we find our mountains? We can find them in the forested highland region. Silty loam, clay, and pegas can be found on the low coastal plain. Silty loam, clay, and pegas can be found on the low coastal plain. The interior savanna has 6 months rainfall and 6 months dry weather. The natural region that has 6 months rainfall and 6 months dry weather is the interior savanna. Let us move on. Now today we are going to look at our low coastal plain. Can you see the map there? We have a map showing all 4 natural regions and our low coastal plain. If you look carefully at the map, you can see you have A, that is where the low coastal plain begins, and that part is called Point Playa. What do we call that point? Point Playa. And then we have B. If you look straight across where B is, that's the length and the low coastal plain end there, and that part is the Corentyne River. So we have another map that is showing the low coastal plain in yellow and bits of orange. So our low coastal plain is that narrow strip of land from point A to point B. The low coastal plain. Why are some land called coast and some land called bank? We know that in Guyana, when we are traveling, we can say, I am going to the east coast or I am going to the west coast. We also say, I am going to the west bank or the east bank. So let us find out why some land are called east and some is called bank. Land that is near the ocean or sea is called coast. Land that is near the ocean or sea is called coast. Land that is near the river is called bank. Land that is near the river is called bank. Let us look at the low coastal plain on the map of Guyana. Can you see the tip that is marked A? That tip of Guyana there is called Point Playa. What do we call it? We call it Point Playa. Look carefully. can you see the B? That is where the Corentyne River is, and that is the end of the coastal plain. So our coastal plain is from Point Playa to the Corentyne River. The low coastal plain. The low coastal plain is the narrow strip or stretch of land that stretches all the way from Point Playa to the Corentyne River. So here again we have that the low coastal plain is from Point Playa to the Corentyne River. The land on the coast is flat and it is sometimes called plain. As we can see, the land, I'm going to repeat again, the land on the coast, that is the low coastal plain, is flat and is sometimes called plain. Here we have a map of Guyana showing the low coastal plain. The low coastal plain. The low coastal plain is the smallest natural region, but most of Guyana's population live on the coastland. Now, do you know what our population is? The population is the people that live in a particular area or the country. The people that live in the country or a particular area is called the population. So we have now found out that most Guyanese live on the coastland or the low coastal plain. The low coastal plain is located near the Atlantic Ocean to the north of Guyana. To the north of Guyana is located the low coastal plain. The land is extremely low and is below sea level at high tide. Now, many of you who live near the seawalls will know that when the water is high, it comes straight up to the seawall. Sometimes it runs over. Seawalls and dams were built to keep the water from flooding the land at high tide. Now, the reason we have those seawalls and we have dams, it is to keep the water from flooding the land when the water is very high in the ocean or the river. Cokers were built to drain the land and control the flow of water. Now, whenever rain falls a lot, you have the coker there, the door will be closed, and then it opens and the water flows through the canal into the ocean. But the door of the coker is closed when the water is high, to prevent the water from the ocean from entering the land. So the cokers there, they have doors that open and close to control the flow of water. So the reason cokers were built is to drain the land and control the flow of water. That is water that is on the land after rainfall to run out, and when there is a high tide, to prevent water from the ocean coming in. We can find corrida and mangrove growing at the edge of the ocean. This helps to prevent erosion. Do you know what erosion is? Erosion is the washing and carrying away of soil. So the roots of the corrida and the mangrove holds the soil together, and that prevents it from washing away. All right, so let's go this over again. The low coastal plain is the smallest natural region, but most of Guyana's population live on the coastland. The low coastal plain is located near the Atlantic Ocean to the north of Guyana. The land is extremely low and is below sea level at high tide. Seawalls and dams were built to keep the water from flooding the land at high tide. Cokers were built to drain the land and control the flow of water. We can find corrida and mangrove growing at the edge of the ocean. This helps to prevent erosion. Now we have some pictures here of the low coastal plain. Our first picture, we have a seawall. Our second picture, we have a sea dam. Our third picture, we have a coker, and then we have the mangrove. These are all the seawall, the sea dam, the coker, and the mangrove. They help to prevent our low coastal plain from flooding. Other features of the low coastal plain. People who live on the low coastal plain enjoy the cool breeze which comes from over the Atlantic. This cool breeze is called the northeast trade winds. Now, because the coast is land near to the ocean, the people who live on the coastline enjoys the breeze from the Atlantic Ocean. And the name of the breeze or the wind that we enjoy is called the northeast trade winds. It cools the sun's heat. This is the reason villages along the coast are windy and cooler. There we have a picture showing a village near the ocean. Rivers. Now, the low coastal plain also has many rivers. Let's look at them. The low coastal plain has many rivers flowing through it into the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the main rivers of Guyana flow into the Atlantic Ocean. There we have a map, and looking at the map, you can see the names of the rivers, and you can see they all lead out into the ocean. The main rivers on the low coastal plain are the Essequibo, Demerara, Berbice, Mahaica, Mahaicony, Abari, Kanji, and the Burisiri. Those are the main rivers on the low coastal plain. Let me name them again. The main rivers on the low coastal plain are the Essequibo, Demerara, Berbice, Mahaica, Mahaicony, Abari, Kanji, and the Burisiri. There you have the section of the map of Guyana showing rivers on the coastland. Rivers and islands. On the coastland, we also have rivers and islands. Can you identify the rivers we named on the map? The largest and the main rivers are the Essequibo, Berbice, and the Demerara. We have three main rivers on the coastland and in Guyana. And those three main rivers are the Essequibo, Berbice, and the Demerara. The Essequibo River is the largest of the three rivers. Which is the largest of the three rivers? The Essequibo. The Essequibo River has many islands at its mouth. The mouth is the part of the river that flows into the ocean. So where the river flows into the ocean, we have islands there. Two of these islands are Wakenham and Leguan. What are two islands found at the mouth of the Essequibo River? They are Wakenham and Leguan. The soil of these islands are very rich and fertile for farming. The soil of these islands are very rich and fertile for farming. Rivers and islands. Map of Guyana showing rivers and the islands at the mouth of the Essequibo River. Now, we have a map here that is showing our main rivers. Remember we said that the three main rivers are Essequibo, Demerara, and Berbice. And at the mouth of the Essequibo River, you can see those tiny dots there. Those are the islands there. And two of them are Wakenham and Leguan. Let us look back. What have you learned? Today we have learned land near rivers is called bank. Land near ocean or sea is called coast. The low coastal plain is below sea level at high tide. That is when the tide in the ocean or the water in the ocean is high, the land on the coastline is below that level. The low coastal plain is the smallest natural region, but it is more heavily populated. Seawalls, dams, cocers, and mangrove help to keep the water out and drain the land. People living on the coastline enjoy the northeast trade winds. What have you learned? We are continuing with what we have learned. The main rivers flow into the Atlantic Ocean. The main rivers flow into the Atlantic Ocean. The largest of the three main rivers is the Essequibo River. Names of some islands at the mouth of the Essequibo River. Homework. Name the three main rivers of Guyana. Name the three main rivers of Guyana. What is the function of the coker? What is the function of the coker? The low coastal plain begins at and ends at. The low coastal plain begins at and ends at. What helps to make the coastline cooler? What helps to make the coastline cooler? Why do you think the islands at the mouth of the Essequibo River is fertile? Why do you think the islands at the mouth of the Essequibo River is fertile? Bye, boys and girls. Make sure you revise and do your homework. See you next time.